In this video, I've decided I'm going to simply describe a photograph that I recalled in what I kind of experienced to be a dream. The nature of dreaming, sleeping, and wake is not the same for me as an MK Ultra, but I perhaps experienced this as a dream. It was a couple of years ago, I think, that I recalled this. Maybe a year or less ago, I'm not sure. Time is also different for me, I think, as an Ultra. And it might be different for other reasons, but I'm not going to go into that. In this experience, I saw this photograph that I perceived myself to have taken when I was a child, maybe 12 years old or so. I'm not sure. I might sound like I have a slight accent right now, by the way, and I would like to acknowledge that. It's because of deprogramming, I think, and alters who speak languages other than English. Anyways, in this photograph, I sort of entered the photograph when I saw it. When I saw it, I went into flashbacks. And I saw images from inside of it kind of rapidly flashing like fragments. And the first thing that I saw was images of women, very skinny, moderately dark skin, dead, with cigarettes in their mouths, posed, and their breasts had been removed and were placed on their rib cages. And as I say this, my mind keeps wanting me to say that there was only one woman, and it was multiple images of the same woman, but only one had been killed. And I think this is my mind's attempt to dissociate from and minimize the fact that multiple women had been killed. And then in the center of the picture was a little boy, maybe about 13. I think he was, or at least I perceived him to be, a little bit older than me. And I believe that he was autistic like myself. He was white as far as I could tell, and his eyes were closed, maybe in response to the horror around him, maybe in response to the camera flash that was directly trained on him. I suspect both. And I remember that I kissed him. at some point. And I want to say more about that, but I won't. The dream experience of the recollection of this was interesting. I walked into a room and there was someone there. I believe it was an altar in my system. And in the middle was a box. They were holding the box. They had their hand on the lid, I think. It's vague, but I think perhaps they were holding their hand on the lid of the box. And they sort of turned it, and I think it was a mutual experience of us opening it together. And I went inside and there was the picture. It was like I went into it and at the same time simply opened it and pulled the picture out. The picture was folded up, I think, multiple times, very precisely. And it sort of, I think, unfolded on its own, like almost mechanically, like it was, like it had a will of its own. Anyways, this particular memory has haunted me more than most in recent times. And I felt like sharing it in a video this whole time, but didn't quite know how. It seems that being on testosterone now really is giving me a voice that I didn't have before. So I'm going to use it and we'll see what happens. I do not know the boy's name or where he was from, although I'm pretty sure, well, I don't know. I want to say he was American, but I don't know. I also want to say that he was a runaway. I would really assume that, but I don't know. But I still feel his presence sometimes. Since I recalled that I felt his presence a few times. And I think his presence is willing me to make this video right now. Oh, and I know what plenty of people who doubt me will say. Oh, what a ridiculous idea. The ghosts are compelling them to speak. Yes, the ghosts compel me to speak. Most people who know death have probably felt something at some point in that way. I don't want to speak for anyone else, but I would imagine it's those who are most disconnected who would doubt that something lingers, particularly when there is violence. But I think I might get myself into trouble here with certain people if I keep talking in that way, so I'll leave it at that. The last thing that I want to say, a couple things, I guess. The lighting was very dark. The flash of the camera was trained specifically on the boy in the center. And otherwise it was dark, and I think that the women were wearing sunglasses. That just came back to me. I think that in the beginning when I was recalling it, and I was recalling actually setting it up, or sort of watching myself set the photograph up, because I was, as far as I know, in charge of that photograph. I don't think the sunglasses were on yet, but in the actual picture, I think there were sunglasses. And they were plain black ones, I think. I'm guessing they were all the same, but I don't know. I don't know. Part of what haunts me about this picture is that it was part of I say this with irony, my developing career as an art snuff director. You see, I wanted to do less violence. When I was around the age of 12, I have recollections of making decisions within the double binds of the program that were aimed at covering up my desire to cause less pain. And a lot of how I accomplished that, at least in this particular way, when it came to the photographs and the films, was to dress it up as art. Now, part of me protests to saying it that way because it was art, and I know people's blood will boil at hearing me say that, but I think I'm quoting something here when I say, even if it's just quoting myself, an artist is an artist regardless of the materials he has to work with. And an artist is no less an artist when he is a slave. I personally feel that some of the most beautiful things have been made out of the most tragic. And no, I do not advocate. You know what, I won't even begin to say that because of how much I don't. But I honor my child's self who studied David Lynch and Stanley Kubrick and Lars von Trier and so on and so forth, and decided to make something out of it that would simultaneously cause less pain physically to people who had been trafficked in this space and deemed expendable, and also shine a light on the nature of death and horror on a deeper level. I always wanted to be a photographer. I just changed my cover photo on here, the banner picture behind my profile picture, to an image I found online of a ghost town in Colorado, a small ruin. That That was the first photographs my front alters were able to take. We were maybe 8 years old, and I believe it actually was during the trip to Denver, Colorado. And I feel my systems reversing as I say this, but I will speak anyway. When we went to Denver, Colorado to get our IQ tested on the 200-point scale test called the Stanford Binet LM, I believe. And I think it was on the way there. Maybe it was on the way back, but I think it might have been on the way there that I was able to take some pictures of this ruin. And I remember realizing in the moment that I was extremely talented. In retrospect, looking at my training, I might also say skilled. But talented still nonetheless is a valid word, I believe, to apply to my pictures. And something compelled me to honor that part of myself by making that a cover photo now. I wanted something other than the picture that I had put up there last. Just didn't quite feel right anymore. So anyways, I'm going to end this video here, and I'm going to say that I would really like to document death one day in a more ethical fashion. It would be nice to be a photographer again. I suppose one could say this is photography, but you know what I mean. Okay. Thank you for listening.